There was this young man. I'm going to walk to a different room and see what happens. And he had everything he needed. Little brat. He had food. He had a nice place to live. He had, whatever. I think he had a castle, you know what I mean? And so he still complained and complained and complained about he didn't have any joy and he didn't know where to find his joy. Know what I mean? So he went to see the wise old women at the edge of town, of course. Now, I'm holding this up so you can see me. Of course, it's always about the wise old women. You know what I mean? That would be me. And they told him he should go to the edge of the world and find God and ask the question. Sorry, my hair's in my face. It's annoying me. And ask the question. So that man set off on a journey, this young man, and he walked and he walked and he walked and he walked. So he came to a place where there was wolves, and they were all fighting together. And there was all these healthy wolves, and then there was a scrawny wolf, kind of on the other side of the path. And as he's walking down the road, the wolf on the other side of the path, the scrawny one, says, "Where are you going?" And the young man says, "I'm going to find God at the edge of the world to ask how to find my joy." And so the wolf said, "Well, why are you talking to God? Will you ask him why I'm so skinny and my other friends over there are so plump and healthy?" And the young man said yes. And so he kept walking, till he came to a forest. And in this forest, on one side of the road, there were all these beautiful trees with leaves and shiny and growing. And then on the other side of the path, there was one little measly tree. And this little measly tree was scrawny and spindly, and it just grew straight up with not many leaves. And when it saw the young man, it said, "Where are you going?" And the young man said, "I'm going to the edge of the world to find God, to ask him where is my joy." And the tree said, "When you find God, would you ask him why I'm so skinny and my other trees over there, my friend trees, why they're so healthy?" And the young man said, "Sure." And so he kept walking. And then, excuse me, coffee. Yeah, I got my bicycle mug with my lipstick on it. What are you going to do? He came to a little cottage with a little picket fence and little roses planted, and he was kind of hungry by then. He'd been walking like days, weeks, months, who knows how long. He knocks on the door, and a beautiful young dark-haired girl with brown eyes, she must have been Italian, answers the door. And he asks her for a drink of water, and she says, "Sure, why don't you come in, I'll give you a little food." Of course, you're Italian, you always give food, you know, you never don't have someone over without food. So she feeds him, and then she says, "Where are you going?" And he says, "I'm going to the edge of the world to find God, to find out where my joy is." And she says, "When you go there, if you find God, would you ask him why I'm so lonely and what I should do about it?" And the young man says, "Of course." And he says, "Goodbye." And he keeps walking. And finally, he gets to the edge of the world. And he's standing on a cliff, and there's a big cloud out there. And he starts to say, "God," and the cloud talks to him. "I know what you want." And he's kind of startled, but you know, in those days, people didn't worry so much about these supernatural events. And he said, "Oh God, I have questions for you." And God, the cloud, says, I know all things." And then suddenly the cloud seems to envelop him, and answers are coming in his ear. And so he turns around and starts walking back. Now, when he gets to that young lady's house, he knocks on the door, and she said, "I'm so happy to see you. Did you find God? Did you ask him what was happening?" And he says, "Yes, God told me I had to keep looking all around me and I would find my joy." And she said, "Well, what did he say about me?" And he said, "Oh, well, God said you should marry, a handsome young man who comes by." And she looks at him and she says, "Would you marry me?" And he says, "No, I gotta walk." And God said, "I gotta look all around and find my joy." And the young woman said, well, right then. And off he goes down the path, looking all around. And he comes to the trees finally, And the tree says, "Hey, did you find God?" And he says, "Yeah." "Well, what did God say?" "Well, he told me I got to look all around. My joy was all around me. I just had to look." And the tree said, "Oh, good. Well, what did he say about me?" And the young man said, "Well, God said, there is a treasure buried at your roots, which is stopping you from growing. So you need to get a nice, strong young man to dig up the treasure so your roots will be free and you can grow. And the tree said, oh, that's wonderful. Look, there's a shovel right over there. Can you do it? And the young man said, no, I can't do it. I got to keep walking. God said, I got to look all around me. I'll find my joy. And the tree said, but the young man kept walking. Finally, he comes to the wolves. And there's that scrawny wolf. And that scrawny wolf says, did you find God? And the young man says yes and tells him the whole thing. And then the scrawny wolf says, well, what did God say about me? And the young man said, well, God said, you do not eat enough. I think God is Italian, don't you think? You do not eat enough. So you need to eat the next foolish creature that comes by. But I got to keep looking around for all my joy. And then the wolf looked at him and said, the next foolish creature? And the young man said yes. And so the wolf ate him up, and mighty tasty he was too. So there's a little story for you called The Edge of the World. And it reminds me about what Anne-Louise used to do with her kids when they were bored. Because I think that young man was bored. And she used to tell them to go sit on the front porch because they wanted to watch TV. And in those days, there were no screens for children, and we did not let them watch TV all the time. They had to go out and play. Play. So she would say, go sit on the front porch and be bored out there, because they'd be complaining and whining. And they would go sit on the front porch, and after a short time, they would find something to do, because sitting on the front porch is boring, sometimes what I mean. You just got to sit there for a bit and you'll figure it out. And I think that's what the young man was doing. He was bored, so he went for a walk to find God, and then he was so foolish, he was still bored. So if you're bored in the house, if you're fed up with being home, if you have to work at home and you can't stand it, all of those things, if any of that's happening, I got to take my thumb out to wave. If any of that is happening for you, go sit on the front porch or the deck or the bedroom or somewhere or outside. And you know what? You sit there for a few minutes, and soon you will not be bored, and you'll look all around and find your joy. So that's for you today. It's all about the joy. I love you, dolls. Now I got to go dry my hair because this is like getting messy already.